She thought she was helpless, until this young mechanic changed everything. Rain hammered the cracked asphalt of Route 17 like a relentless accusation, turning the narrow shoulder into a shallow river of regret. Elena Ramirez gripped the steering wheel of her ancient Ford Taurus, her knuckles white as bone, whispering prayers in Spanish that had long since lost their fire. At 72, with arthritis clawing at her joints and a heart heavy from 3 years of widowhood, she'd convinced herself this was it. The final unraveling. The engine had sputtered to a halt just past the faded billboard for Sunny Acres Mobile Home Park, her home of 40 years, now a graveyard of rusted trailers and unspoken dreams. No cell signal. No AA card in her purse, forgotten in the divorce of her late husband Miguel's debts. Just her, the storm, and the suffocating truth. She was helpless. Utterly, irrevocably alone. Back in the dim glow of her single-wide, Elena had stared at the eviction notice taped to her door that morning, the red ink bleeding like an open wound. Rent overdue by 2 months, utilities flickering like a candle in the wind. Miguel's pension had vanished into medical bills, leaving her with a part-time gig at the local diner, wiping counters for tips that barely covered cat food for Whiskers, her one faithful companion. "Lo siento, Mrs. Ramirez," the landlord had drawled over the phone, his southern twang as oily as the grits she served. "Times are tough for everyone." Tough? She'd laughed bitterly to her reflection in the fogged bathroom mirror, her silver-streaked hair a wild halo. For Elena, tough was burying a husband who'd promised forever, only to leave her adrift in a sea of paperwork and pitying glances. She wasn't tough. She was a ghost haunting her own life, invisible to the world rushing by. That's when desperation had nudged her into the Taurus, a relic from 1998 that Miguel had babied like a firstborn. One last grocery run, she'd told herself, clutching the steering wheel as if it could anchor her sinking ship. But halfway to the Piggly Wiggly, the beast had coughed its final breath, stranding her in the downpour. Horns blared from passing semis, their drivers too harried to notice the frail woman waving a sodden handkerchief. She slumped against the seat, tears mingling with rainwater on her cheeks. Dios mío, why now? The helplessness wrapped around her like barbed wire, tightening with every unanswered plea. She imagined Whiskers waiting by the door, meowing into the empty night. What would become of them both? In that moment, Elena felt smaller than the pebbles crunching under her tires, insignificant, expendable, a story no one would bother to tell. Headlights pierced the gloom like a hesitant dawn, slowing to a crawl behind her hazard lights. Elena's pulse quickened, a flicker of fear mingling with fragile hope. A pickup truck, mud-splattered and bearing the logo Jax's Auto Repair, We Fix What Breaks, pulled alongside. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped a young man no older than 25, his flannel shirt clinging to broad shoulders, a worn baseball cap shielding eyes the color of polished walnut. He was black, with an easy stride that cut through the rain like it owed him nothing, toolbox in one hand and a flashlight in the other. "Ma'am, you all right in there?" His voice carried over the storm, warm and steady, laced with the soft drawl of rural Georgia. She cracked the window, water sluicing in like an uninvited guest. "Car, it just died. I'm so sorry to trouble you." Her words trembled, laced with the shame of her vulnerability. But Jax, short for Jackson Hale, though she'd learn that later, didn't flinch. He crouched by the hood, popping it with practiced ease, his beam dancing over belts and hoses. "No trouble at all, ma'am. Name's Jax, let's see what she's telling us." As thunder grumbled overhead, he worked in silence, rain beating on his lashes like unshed tears. Elena watched from the warmth of her cab, mesmerized by the quiet competence of his hands, calloused from wrenches and welds, yet gentle as they traced the engine's weary veins. Minutes stretched into an eternity of small talk, Jax glancing up with questions that felt like lifelines. "You from around here? Got family waiting on you?" Elena hesitated, the words sticking like dry cornbread. "Just me and my cat. Trailer park off exit 12. She didn't mention the eviction, the gnawing emptiness, but something in his nod, patient, unjudging, cracked the dam. Before she knew it, words spilled out. Miguel's slow fade from cancer, the diner shifts that left her feet throbbing, the way the world seemed to spin faster for everyone but her. Jax listened, really listened, his flashlight steady as he diagnosed a cracked serpentine belt, Cheap fix, but one she'd never afford. Life's got a way of throwing curveballs, he said softly, wiping grease on his jeans. But it don't get the last word. By the time he straightened, declaring the Taurus revivable with a tow and $20 worth of parts, the rain had eased to a drizzle, mirroring the subtle shift in Elena's chest. Jax offered to drive her home. No charge, he insisted, just neighborly. And as they rumbled toward Sunny Acres, the cab filled with the scent of wet leather and unspoken stories. He talked about his own curveballs then, unexpected as a summer frost, orphaned at 12, bounced through foster homes until he apprenticed under old Mr. Hale, the shop's founder who'd seen potential in a scrawny kid with sticky fingers and a knack for engines. Thought I was helpless too back then, Jax admitted, eyes on the road. No folks, no fancy degree, just grease under my nails and a fire in my gut saying I could fix more than cars. Elena turned, studying the lines of quiet determination etched into his young face. Here was kindness not as charity, but as a mirror, reflecting back the strength she'd buried under layers of loss. They pulled up to her trailer as dusk bruised the sky purple, Whisker's silhouette a frantic shadow in the window. Jax killed the engine, but instead of bidding goodnight, he lingered, gaze snagging on the eviction notice fluttering like a trapped bird. Mind if I take a look inside, ma'am? See if there's anything mechanical I can help with? Elena's laugh was brittle, a reflex against the ache. It's just lights flickering, nothing fancy. But she unlocked the door anyway, stepping into the cramped space that smelled of chamomile tea and faded hopes. Whiskers wound around Jax's ankles, purring like a tiny motor, and Elena watched bemused, as the young man flicked switches, traced wires with the reverence of a surgeon. What happened next was the first unexpected turn, a spark in the fuse box. Not faulty wiring, but a loose connection from years of neglect. Jax knelt, toolbox splayed like an offering, and in under an hour the lights blazed steady, banishing shadows she'd grown accustomed to. But it was his next words that twisted the knife of realization deeper. This ain't just about bulbs, Mrs. Ramirez, that notice? I seen 'em before. Lost my granny to one last year. Trailer like this, debts piling up after Granddad passed. His voice cracked, the first fracture in his unflappable facade. Elena froze, the parallel striking like lightning. Two souls, worlds apart yet tethered by the same invisible fray. She thought she was helpless too, he continued, eyes distant. Begged me not to worry, said she'd manage. But I didn't push hard enough. Let her slip away to a shelter, thinking my shop hours left no room for more. The confession hung heavy, a bridge between their brokenness. Jax wasn't the savior she'd imagined. He was a man haunted by his own what-ifs, reaching out to rewrite a story he'd lost. In that profound hush, Elena saw it clearly. The illusion of helplessness wasn't hers alone. It was a chain, forged in isolation but fragile against the hammer of shared humanity. You remind me of Miguel, she whispered, tears carving clean paths down her rain-streaked face. He fixed things too. Not always engines, but hearts. Taught me to keep going even when the road got rough. Jax met her gaze, vulnerability raw as an open hood. Then let's honor that. Together. What followed was no grand gesture, but a quiet revolution. Jax pulled out his phone, dialing the landlord with Elena's permission. His voice steady as he negotiated a payment plan, offering to trade shop repairs for deferred rent, invoking community ties Elena had forgotten she had. Mrs. Ramirez here's a fixture here, he said, weaving her diner stories into pleas that landed like lifelines. The landlord grumbled but relented, swayed not by threats but by the selfless fire in a young mechanic's words. As the call ended, Jax didn't stop there. He texted a group chat buzzing with locals, fellow mechanics, diner regulars, even the pastor from the Baptist church down the road, rallying them with a simple ask. Neighbor in need. Who's got a hand? By morning, the unexpected cascade began. Casseroles stacked on her stoop, a volunteer from legal aid promising debt counseling, and Jax himself returning with a new belt for the Taurus, installed gratis under the trailer's awning. But the true climax crested that evening as the sun dipped low, painting the park in hues of forgiveness. Elena stood on her steps, Whiskers at her feet, watching a makeshift circle form. Strangers turned kin, sharing potluck under string lights Jax had rigged. Laughter mingled with tears, stories of loss blooming into blueprints for tomorrow. In the center, Jax knelt by a picnic table, not fixing a thing but listening as Elena spoke of Miguel's secret recipe for tamales, her voice gaining strength with each syllable.